I unpublished my debut novel recently, and I kind of mentioned it in passing on social media. Just kind of put it out there, and a few of you were like, whoa, why did you do it? Like, did I miss the video? And nope, I have not done a video on it because, like, I don't know, I felt a little weird, like, do I want to talk about this? I don't know, but you know what? I figured since a few of you were curious, I would do a little story time and share my reasons for why I actually did unpublish. So let me show you the books I'm talking about. This one right here, Evelyn's Number, which actually had, if I can find it, I think down here, an original cover right there and a larger size. Let me just show you them next to each other. And then obviously this is a duology, so I unpublished the sequel, Pearl's Number, as well, which is book 2. Before I go into the story time, I just want to say I also have published other books. These are all mine. There's a novel planner notebook here. There is a Marketing for Authors series that I co-wrote with Mandy Lynn. Then there is the Stolen Kingdom series, which is these 4, and they have had multiple cover versions printed, which is really fun, as well as a collector's edition. Then there's this series, starting with The Secret Gift, which is the Queen's Rise series. I'm tearing up my bookshelf here, but that is also published in an omnibus edition right here, this gorgeous one with 2 exclusive bonus scenes. And on top of those, I have actually written, there was Invisible Souls, which I may never publish, but technically I wrote a draft of that. I've rewritten the first book in the Butter Book series 3 times, but we'll count that as 1. And then I have written half of book 2, so I don't know if we can really count that one yet, but technically that's 3 more that are not published. Let me do the math. Okay, if we only count the novels, because I'm getting really confused here at this point, because I've got collector's editions, omnibuses, co-written books. I didn't write all of those, but let's just say novel-wise, 9 published plus 3. Wow, that's kind of cool. So like 12, 11 and a half really. Wait, I have not finished the first Butter book either, so 10 and a half. I don't know. Okay, story time. So I did this, gosh, it was either right before my daughter was born or right after. So it's been roughly 6 months, maybe more. I honestly can't remember. Postpartum is wild. It's just a blur. But I just did it one day. I just pressed the unpublish button, and because they're on Amazon, I didn't have to do a whole lot because they weren't on other platforms. They were just there. So I just had to click one little button and the ebook was unpublished immediately. Funny enough, the print book is still out there. For those of you who are like, oh, I didn't get a chance and I wanted it, it's actually technically still there. I looked it up right before I started recording and there's like 1 copy left, and I was laughing at that because I'm like, okay. And there's actually 1 copy left of book 2 also, so like 1 lucky person can have those, but otherwise it's, I think, gonna be gone. But every time that I thought it was snatched up, it would seem like another one went into circulation, because technically like half-price books could put it out there, people can resell, I think, on Amazon. So yeah, the book's technically out there. I can't say for sure if it will still be available in the future though. Okay, so let's get into my reasons. I have 3. I'm just gonna say them straight out and then I'll kind of dig into them deeper. The first one, not proud of the writing anymore. Second one, I don't write dystopian / sci-fi anymore either. And number 3, I don't want people to turn away from me and my books because of those 2 things. Because it's basically like a brand that I'm creating, like expectations are, you know, XYZ, and if they get the expectation that my writing's not very good or that I write dystopian and then they see my other books, I don't know. Does that make sense? Let's dig into it more. Let's start with the writing, because first of all, the story itself, I actually think is pretty good. This is back when Hunger Games and like Divergent and all the dystopian things were trending. So I guess technically by accident, I was kind of chasing a trend, but it's hard to say because I don't even remember when those were trending. But I started writing this book in college way back in, gosh, 2008, I think, 2007 maybe. All that to say, it was like a capstone project, writing project. I think that's what they called it. And my professor hated it. And it was just this whole thing that made me stop writing and reading pretty much for years. And I eventually came back to it in 2016 when I was laid off from my job. And it was the end of 2016. I actually have a whole author journey story that I will just link that video below so that I don't, you know, let myself tangent here too much. But I was so excited, and I finally finished the book, right? The first draft anyway. And then I spent all of 2017 learning how to edit, learning how to be an indie author, how to publish, how to do beta reading, how to do ARCs, how to do, yeah, did I say publish already? I did. And at the time, funny enough, it was not Amazon's KDP. It was called, oh, I have the postpartum memory loss thing. Create Space. Okay, sorry, that took way longer than it should have. I started out on Create Space right before it was, I think, bought out by KDP, Amazon's publishing company. I don't even remember anymore. So not important. Let me get myself back on track. I actually did a Kickstarter for it, funny enough, because I had done 2 Kickstarters before for other projects, and I was like, this is a really fun way to publish. I don't know how to do a pre-order, so I'm gonna do a pre-order this way. And then obviously I've changed. I have videos on where I publish now, places I've tried. I will link those below as well. But coming back to the story itself, that was what I was trying to talk about. While the writing is not necessarily good, because it's really not. Honestly, my professor had some points there. She could have taught me to write better instead of just like putting me down. Okay, she was not doing a great job at that. But yes, the writing itself did have issues. If I were to go back and rewrite it, which I'm not going to do because like I said, I also am not writing dystopian anymore, so I don't want to promote and write in a world when I've switched to a different genre. But anyway, if I were to go back and write it, there were some things that I did really badly in the beginning. I did a prologue, which you're not supposed to do. And there's a lot of reasons for that, but mainly it's just because it slows things down and you're supposed to start in the action. So if I was to rewrite it, let me give you a tiny bit of context. I wrote a world where the characters, kind of like a caste system. I was very intrigued by the way like India has a caste system, and there were some other cultures that I was reading about at the time, and I was like, this is fascinating. What if there was a caste system where people were given numbers tattooed on the side of their neck, and they literally, like, you were locked in, you could not change, because that aspect was very intriguing to me. And so they would get these numbers from God, which I also really liked the idea of showing a world where religion was kind of misused, because it technically is all the time in the real world. And how like they would say God gave you this number, but really it was people doing something and people just using God's name to get what they wanted. And so there was this whole like inciting incident where my character got her number, and she was in a very high influential family, expected like, I don't remember anymore. I think it was like the top 10 numbers were like all good. And then she got like the lowest possible number. I think she was like a 29. I don't know why I picked that. I have no idea. But anyway, so she just like dropped to the bottom of the bottom. Super unimportant, kind of like a Cinderella story almost, looking back. And so if I was to go back and rewrite it, I would start with that inciting incident instead of like I think I had her waking up. So there was like a dream sequence. You're not supposed to do that. The prologue, of course, was her being younger instead of, I could have flashed back. But I started with the prologue because they got their tattoos at a young age, I think 13. And then I wanted to bring her to like age 17 and start the book there. But I would have just started her at 17 and like done a quick flashback. Flashbacks are valuable. There's nothing wrong with them. And like had the inciting incident happen that way and like shown it in a different way. So it was more showing instead of telling. And then I would have not done the whole like, get ready with me, here's what my day looks like, super boring. That kind of writing is so bad. And it's very, very, very easy to do when you're a brand new writer, which I was. And I didn't know what I was doing. So I kind of did all the things you're not supposed to do. And yeah, so if I was to rewrite it, those are 3 examples of what I do differently, but I would do a lot better at showing instead of telling. And I also did something called RUE. No, hold on. That's what my editor called it. It was RUE stood for resist the urge to explain. Something I do a lot. So I would describe it very nicely, and then I would also explain it after. And my editor was like, you don't need to do that. The reader, like, when you described it, you were let them figure it out. Let them. So anyway, those are just some examples of what I did not do well and why my writing I was not proud of it like now. But I think a really big question that I should pause and talk about is, do I regret it? No, absolutely not. Because at the time, that was my best writing. And at the time, I needed to put that book out to learn how to write the next book, Pearl's Number. And then I needed to write those 2 books to figure out, oh, I actually really like writing fairy tale fantasy retellings and write The Stolen Kingdom. And I needed each book to help me write better and to grow in my writing. And if I hadn't been prolific before kids, I don't know if I call it prolific, but if I hadn't written that many books before kids, like, I would be so much further behind in my learning curve than I am now. Because I feel like I'm finally writing, like, honestly, just between you and me, this book right here is where I finally felt like I found my voice, my writing style, and I felt really, really proud of this book. And this is book 3 in a series, you guys. So you have to read books 1 and 2 to get there. And book 2 is actually not bad. I feel like I was on my way to getting to where I wanted to be. Book 1 I actually rewrote, funny enough. It used to be a much smaller short story. And then I realized that there was a whole series here. So I ended up adding a good 50 pages to it and rewriting it and just showing a lot more, actually. Just tearing up my bookshelf now. Whatever. Anyway, the point is, I needed to write and publish those books and learn and grow, and I'm very thankful that I did. I would not take that back, despite the fact that I also don't want people reading my debut novel now, because it's a little bit embarrassing. And that leads into kind of the other thing I said, which I called it, I don't know, I'm going to call it branding or confusing readers, because if I talk about dystopian books and then I have fairy tale retellings, like, depending on where people come in, they're not going to probably want to read both. Readers tend to have preferences. Sure, there's going to be a few people who are like happy to cross over, but have you ever heard somebody say that author is an auto-buy because I've read this book by them, so I know I'm going to love that book? There's that trust that you build in your readers. That's really important to me. Now, this is going to be different for everybody. So this is not a video of me being like, you have to do it my way, because you don't. And I don't know, there's authors who write lots of different genres under the same author name. And then there's authors who write lots of different genres, but they just make pen names. So like, I write, the dystopian under this pen name, and then children's book, which I also did a children's book. That was like the 3rd book I published, and I was just having fun. You live and you learn, but maybe I should unpublish that too. It's actually right here. This is from my dog Penny, and I just literally took pictures of her. Oops, hold on. I just took pictures of her and I cartoonized them and made a cute little children's book, because I have friends with kids and people were telling me this is a good idea. I don't think it was a great idea, but it was fun. But children's books are not for me. But anyway, I'm tangenting. So what I'm trying to say is that if you are going and writing multiple genres like that, it's going to naturally be a little bit more confusing to readers. And so what they say is, if you're going to be branding yourself and having stronger marketing, the more focused, I guess you could say, or the more targeted you can be with what you write and what readers can expect from you, the better. It's that simple. So as I was looking at this series, and I thought about unpublishing it for years, honestly, and I talked to friends about it, and sometimes people would be like, no, it's a great representation of, how you were when you started and what your writing was like in the beginning and how you've grown, which is all very true. I'm not arguing with that. But it came down to me realizing, if you were a brand new reader and you just stumbled onto my books and you start with Evelyn's Number, you're either going to be like, wow, I really don't like the writing, because it's fair. I don't think it was that bad, okay? But it's not a representation of my writing anymore. I feel like my stories used to take forever to suck people in. Beginnings especially were hard for me. I feel like, again, I told too much, and you could just get kind of bored because you're not like immersed in the story. You're just like kind of hearing like this happened and then this happened. And anyway, again, not a bad story, just not very proud of my writing. So if they're like, oh, I don't really love this writing, they're not going to go on to read my other books. They're going to assume they're all the same, right? And even if they do like the writing, because there's been some wonderful people who I think honestly see past that and enjoy the story, because thank you, I appreciate you. Those people would still be like, wait, so the other books by Bethany are not dystopian Christian sci-fi? I don't know if I really want to read fairy tale retellings. Like, this is what I want to read. Like, so that's just not, it's not good branding. It's not good marketing. It's not a good business decision. Does that make sense? I'm very curious what you guys will think, because I know it's really just in the end a personal decision, and I don't want you to ever see this as like, don't publish your debut novel, because again, I'm really glad that I did. That said, I've kind of thought about it, and I've always wondered, like, what if I hadn't published my debut? What if I just written a few books? Like, I think that's kind of the advice that trad pub authors get a lot, is write a few books, get that, like, the growing pains out of your system, learn how to write and craft better stories, and then publish or try to query or whatever your 4th, 5th, 6th book, whatever. And I like that advice, okay, but the problem is that usually for an author, our first book is kind of our baby. It's kind of our, like, the heart of our desire to storytell. It's the book that called us into writing, the one that we most want to get out into the world. So to tell an author, like, hey, don't publish that, you know, just like write it, but then toss it in the trash, or no, that's terrible. Toss it in the drawer, I guess. I get why that would be upsetting, because it's something that's so important to us. And for me, I really, 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 really wanted to get that story out there. It's just things change. So I don't think, okay, let me just kind of try to wrap this up in a neat little bow and tie it up. I don't think it's wise to wait for perfection to get started, because you will never get there. I don't think it's wise to worry about where you'll be in 10 years. Just focus on where you are now. Is that a good way to say it? I don't know. It's just that if I knew where I was going to be now and knew that I was going to unpublish, yeah, it might have changed things, but it also probably wouldn't have changed them for the better, because like I said, I needed that first book to get to my second book, to get to my third, to get to my fourth, and I needed to learn along the way. I needed to make the mistakes. And I think being willing to make mistakes and being willing to fail, it honestly gets you places faster. There's literally a saying that's fail faster, right? I'm pretty sure a lot of us have heard that. Don't be afraid to fail. I am not ashamed of it at all. I think it was a great learning experience. So yeah. Okay, that was a weird ending. Hope you enjoyed.